committee for Tuesday, April 6th. And attendance, I believe, we're all here. No regrets. Second item is approval of the agenda. Can I get a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Coleman, second by Mayor Bailey. Is there any additions or to that agenda? Okay, seeing none.
Just the addendum letter, Mr.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, and it was a short addendum, and that was with the one letter. So, okay, all in favor? Okay, opposed, if any, none. Okay, that'll take us to item 3, declaration of pecuniary interest. Please do so at the appropriate time. Item 4, we don't have any delegations, petitions, or presentations outside of the normal planning applications. Item 5, adoption of minutes from the previous meeting. Can I get a motion to get that on the floor? Moved by Councillor Pierce, second by Councillor Bell. Any items in there anybody want to discuss? Okay, seeing none. Councillor Bell, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one comment on page 6 of the minutes, which says, noting the options to show how a lower or higher target than the recommendations would work can be provided. Can we strike out can and put in will?
Okay, I'm looking. You're on page
6 of the minutes.
Okay.
It's the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph there.
What page of our package?
Page of the package is 10.
Page 10. And
4th point down. Last sentence.
Sorry, which point?
4th bullet point, last sentence. It says, noting the options to show how a lower or higher target than the recommendations would work can be provided. Can you strike out can and include will?
I don't see an issue with that. Adam, is there any issues with that? I don't see any.
It would be up to the committee. I can certainly amend the minutes as directed.
Okay, does anybody have any issues with that? Okay, Councilor Albert, go ahead.
As long as can means will, that staff will provide it, that's fine.
Yeah, I thought we did get that provided already, but I'm okay if the committee's all right. Okay, we'll see no objections. We'll go with that then. Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I might, are you talking about the report that came forward from Jennifer just recently?
Well, that's what I was talking about, because in that report, she talked about low density versus high density, which I hope everybody read.
It was in our Friday package.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bell?
Yeah, just to say that we have not had that discussion in council or in committee.
No, yeah, you're right. We got the information, but we haven't, you're right, we haven't formally flushed out. But if we're okay with changing that, then we'll go ahead and change that, unless I hear anything and I don't see anybody. Okay. Other than that, change, anything else? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? You see none. This will take us to item 7. And for anybody that's watching tonight, we have 6 items under item 7. And these are all public hearings under the Planning Act. And for each of the items tonight, for the 6 items that we're about to hear, we are going to receive these for information only. There will be no decision made on any of these tonight, just to be clear. So that'll take us to the first one, and that's 7.1, RPT 2186-ZBA 1221RC, and that's 230 Oakland Road. And I'll call on our planner to present that.
Okay.
That's you, Ryan?
Yes, sir. I'm just sharing my presentation now. Is that showing up here?
It is. Yep.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to mute myself.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay. The subject lands are located on the north side of Oakland Road, east of Highway 24 in the former township of Oakland. Subject lands are approximately 0.45 hectares or 11 acres in size. with a frontage of approximately 56 meters on Oakland Road. The applicant has applied to temporarily rezone a portion of the subject lands from special exception automotive commercial C6-3 to a temporary zone in order to permit the use of a mobile refreshment cart for a period of 3 years. This committee will recall a similar application being brought forward in late 2020. And the key difference here with this application is that the applicant is now proposing to locate the mobile refreshment cart outside of the natural heritage zone and to be located entirely within land zoned as C6-3. So tonight, staff is recommending that this application be received for information purposes only, and a recommendation report will be brought forward at a future committee meeting. Thank you, and that concludes my remarks.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Are there any questions of Ryan at this time from the committee? Councillor Wheat.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Ryan. It appears to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that some of this land that's going to get rezoned is going to come out of natural heritage. Am I looking at it properly?
No, so through you, Mr. Chair, the applicant's previous application had located the mobile refreshment cart within land zoned as natural heritage. Their revised proposal is entirely outside of the natural heritage zone and will be located entirely within land zoned as C6-3. That's an automotive commercial special exception zone.
Okay. Any other questions for the planner at this time? Okay, I don't see any hands up, but Ryan, I appreciate you pointing out the significant difference between the previous application of last year and this year. I'll go now to the applicant. I see Sherry, you're here tonight. So did you want to speak to this?
I think,
Rob?
Mr. Chair, I'll start and then Sherry can provide more detail. This application, as described by the planner, is a resubmission of an earlier temporary use zoning bylaw amendment to allow for the establishment of a food truck on 230 Oakland Road. The original application, as described by the planner, sought permission to locate the food truck near the western property boundary next to the access to the Willow Lake Campground. And as pointed out, that area was zoned or is zoned natural heritage. This application was considered in early October and refused, with the notice of refusal giving the reason that the cart was in fact on the property, the cart before the horse, as described, and it was in fact in the natural heritage area. Those were the reasons within the notice of refusal. The proposal has been altered to take these concerns into heart and revising the submission to address these concerns by removing the cart to the area more central to the property in an area zoned totally commercial. And not only is it out of the natural heritage area, it is located out of the regulatory limits of the Grand River Conservation Authority. Members will recall that at the last meeting, in fact, the Conservation Authority had no objection to even the location that was originally chosen because the structure is in fact movable and can be removed in the event of a flood. The revised application again seeks to establish the proposed food truck for a period of 3 years as outlined in the Planning Act. The subject site is also within the property where a store is being established within an existing building. And the food truck, as will be explained further by Ms. Graham, will provide alternate food premise for surrounding general community, traveling public, perhaps the trailer park when during the season, and those walking the trails in the area. As noted, Ms. Graham is available. I believe she wrote a fairly lengthy letter, which I believe may have been addressed to the council members, and she can expand on that and provide and respond to any questions. I can respond to immediate questions in relationship to planning, and she can relate to the business. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Sherry, did you want to add anything to what Rob said at this time?
No, I submitted the letter because I wasn't
Yep.
sure exactly what the process was going to be. So I wanted to make sure people had, our take on what we're up to here. So assuming people have read this letter, if they haven't, I'm more than happy to highlight what it's about. But if I don't need to do that, I can just leave it at that unless people have questions and I can answer them.
Okay, your letter was in our package, so we have read it, just so you know. So,
Okay.
What I'll do then is I'll open it up to the committee. And does anybody have any questions for the applicant and her agent at this time? Okay, I see Councillor Gatward. Go ahead. And you have to unmute yourself, Joan, and then start.
Talking to myself. My question is, Mr. Chairman, the food building is being moved to the east from the last proposed location. Can anyone tell me how many feet it's being moved to the east?
Robert, Sherry, what?
I can tell you that the food truck is about 32 meters from the western property boundary. And as I recall, the original site for the food truck was fairly close to the western boundary. So I'm going to say 25 to 30 meters further to the east.
Okay, and on the, as a follow-up, on the proposed food truck, there's a measurement of 7.38, I think. Is that meters? Is that the length of the food truck?
All our plans are in metric, yes.
So that is the length of the food truck. So it's over 20 feet long.
Correct.
Okay. And I know Ryan's called it a mobile refreshment cart, which I don't see it as a cart. And I guess if you put a truck engine on the front of it, it could be a food truck. But it's really, is it one of those sea cans that's been turned into a building for food?
It's a trailer.
A trailer.
It's basically a trailer. And when they
Trans-
call it a food truck, that relates to a definition within the bylaw.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gatward. Any other questions for the applicant or her agent? Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I guess, to Sherry in regards to the note that she sent in there. Thanks for that. You mentioned in there the food truck will bring employment. How many employees are you looking to have here?
Right now, I guess it depends on how busy it's going to be and how much demand there is for it to be open. But I intend to have at least one person managing the truck and probably at least 2 or 3 part-time employees.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions at this time from the committee? Seeing none, I will open this, at this point, I'll open up this meeting to the public. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this application?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there are 3 members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay.
I'll call on Michael Johnston as I see his video on.
Okay, Michael, I'll get you to unmute yourself and just for the record, state your name and then your address for the clerk. Okay, please.
Yep. My name is Michael Johnston. My address is 225 Oakland Road. So I'm located directly across the street from the address in question for the application. Basically, at this point in time, speaking with the neighbors surrounding, as early as or as late as today, we are not in favor of this zoning change, and we are putting together a written submission, and we'll submit that in as quickly as we can, and that's about as much as we're able or prepared to say at this point.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Michael. As I mentioned earlier, before we started this part of the meeting, tonight we're just gathering information, and there'll be no decisions made. So yeah, as soon as you guys can get that in, definitely get it into the planner. Ryan, you do have Ryan's contact information, I'm guessing, at this point. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so no questions then from Michael, but you guys are working on getting some information together. So we'll leave it at that. We'll go to the next one. Adam, who else do we have?
We have Isaac Allen.
Okay, Isaac, you want to go ahead if you got any questions or concerns? Now's a good time to bring them up, and I'll get you to unmute yourself, and you can go ahead and speak.
All right, thank you very much, and good afternoon. So my name is Isaac Allen. I live at I live at 228 Oakland Road in Scotland. So I actually own the property adjoining that includes Willow Lake Private Road. I just basically wanted to echo what Michael had said, that I am working on a more formal response and a more just thought out response to an opposition to the proposed location of the food truck. And I just wanted to make my voice heard about that this evening.
Okay, fair enough then. Appreciate you coming out as well. Okay, so again, you got Ryan Cummins' contact information, and he's the planner in charge of this one. Okay, Adam, we'll go to the next person. You said we had 3 tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's Kyle Folick. I'm sorry if I butchered your last name.
Okay, Kyle, go ahead, and yeah, we'll get you to pronounce your name properly and just give us your address, and then yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, it's Kyle Fiolic, 226 Oakland Road, directly behind the property that is going to that is proposing to have the food truck put in. Basically, just for me and my family, I just don't feel it's a good fit for us, and I'm against it, as the food truck's going to be about 5 feet away from my kids at all times.
Anything else to add, Kyle, before we?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just, at this point, usually we'll ask the agent or the applicant if they can answer the question. We didn't get any specific questions at this time, so I guess they will be submitting some later on. I will ask a second time if there's anyone else from the public that wishes to speak to this application. And I'll ask a third time if there's anyone else wishing to speak to this application. And hearing none from our clerk, I'll declare this part of the meeting closed to the public. And I'll, again, like I said, I didn't get any specific questions per se from the public, so I'll turn it back to the committee and ask if we can get a mover to receive it.
Can I just make one point, Mr. Miller?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Sherry.
And I don't know that this is relevant at this point or not, but the last comment, the positioning of the food truck is probably going to be at least 15 feet from that neighbor's property, or it's not 5 feet.
15 feet, okay.
In fact,
So
Mr. Miller, Councillor Miller, I'll correct that and say we've showed it as being 30 feet away from the northern property boundary.
Okay, 30 feet, not 5 feet. Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Okay, moved by Councilor LaFerriere, and we was seconded by, Mayor David Bailey to receive. Any discussion before we? Councilor Hauser, are you voting or you got a question?
I have a question that just came to me for staff, if that's allowed, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead. That's why we're here.
For Ryan, so just so I understand this a little bit better, this part of the property is zoned commercial. So if Sherry was opening a restaurant, she would not have to apply at all. I just wanted to clarify that, and it's because it's a food truck, not a restaurant. like an actual bricks and mortar restaurant that she's required? I just want a little clarification on that, please.
Certainly, and it's a good point. The zoning bylaw that applies to 230 Oakland Road, at least within the commercial component, it's a site-specific bylaw, and I'm just pulling it up here. If you just bear with me, sorry. It's C6-3, so that's an automotive commercial site-specific zone. And I'm not gonna read out the whole thing, but basically the uses are limited within that site-specific zone, and so it doesn't enjoy the full range of commercial uses. Also, I think within the C6 zone, the base zone, we'll call it, it does not permit a restaurant. But just shortly here, the permitted uses on site shall be limited to an automobile sales and rental establishment, an automobile repair garage, automotive service station, a convenience store and deli, and accessory use in buildings. And so, as pointed out, within the C6 automotive commercial zone, a mobile refreshment cart as defined. There's many different iterations of what could be defined as a mobile refreshment cart, but that's permitted within the automotive commercial zone. However, the uses are limited to what's stated in that site-specific bylaw, and so that is the relief we're looking for today, or the applicant is looking for, of course. I hope that answers it. Sorry.
A quick follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Okay, so I think I understand that better. So if the applicant was wanting to open a restaurant, a traditional restaurant on that location, they would still have to go through a process like this. It's right.
Well, it's an interesting question, because the C6-3 zone lists a convenience store and deli, and I'll put those in quotations because a deli isn't defined in our bylaw, unfortunately. But just looking at the verbiage here from the bylaw, I'd imagine that this is what we call a legacy zone from the probably from the township days, and you see some quirky things in there. So we'd have to look at what's being proposed, but we'd probably take a literal interpretation of what a deli would be intended to be, probably a fast food restaurant, maybe not a large scale sit down restaurant, but we haven't really had that dialogue with the applicant at this point.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Councilor Ferrier?
Yeah, thank you. Through you to Ryan. Just to follow up on Councilor Howe's question. So at a convenience store, my dad used to own convenience stores and a deli actually, and he made hot dogs and hamburgers and BLTs and breakfast. And anyway, a lot of the stuff that sounds like the cart is trying to sell. And I just want to clarify that when we look at that piece, again, this could be a case of if the applicant was turned down, although my reading on it is that we don't have a lot of grounds to at this point, but we'll see. But if the applicant wants to get turned down, they could then open a convenience store / deli, which would not need to be applied to and would probably be something that neighbors may object more to in the future. So again, they can do a convenience store and deli right there on that spot with just site-specific planning approvals.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think the important part is that the bylaw here states that the permitted uses shall be limited to automotive uses, convenience store, deli, and unfortunately, a food truck or mobile refreshment cart is not listed there, so it has to be explicitly stated.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Wheat, you had your hand up, or were you getting ready to vote?
Yes, I did, Mr. Chair. This is a comment rather than a question. Am I allowed to comment?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the time.
Okay, comment. I'll direct this to Ryan. I refer to the letter, and the applicant talks about more options for people to dine. And at this point, and look at the COVID situation, we have many restaurants that have been established and really struggling. Now they can't even have outdoor dining. It's only curbside pickup. And I personally don't feel that we need another outdoor dining experience when we already have established businesses here in the county of Brant struggling to make ends meet. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Gatward, you had your hand raised. And you have to take yourself off mute.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to give a little bit of history to what Ryan was explaining regarding the zoning. Over 20 years ago, there was a little gas bar there, and the lights are still there from that gas bar. The people that ran the gas bar also had a little convenience store, And that's why it was specifically zoned the way it was. Now, after the county took over in 1999 and the gas bar closed and the convenience store, they closed actually probably before amalgamation, but another property owner put storage units in there, and I think you can see them in one of Ryan's pictures in our package. They brought in sea cans all painted up, and they were going to store whatever in those storage units. And I think they were kind of catering to the recreational trailer park, Willow Lake Park, which has, I believe, over 300 campsites. So it's a large
Point of
park.
order, Mr. Chair. As much as I appreciate the history lesson, what does this have to do with what's before us this evening?
Yeah, fair enough.
Well,
Joan,
I
know you're trying to educate us, but yeah, let's.
I'm explaining about the zoning, but if Councillor,
No, it's okay. Go ahead, Joan. Please finish.
no, if Councillor Pierce objects, anybody who'd like to know more can contact me.
Actually, I'm quite familiar with the property myself, having driven by it many, many times. So, and I remember the gas bar quite well. So, any other questions or comments before we call the vote? Okay, seeing none, there's a motion on the floor to receive. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, so I think to Sherry and, well, Rob, you obviously know, and to the members of the public that came out tonight, A, first of all, thanks for coming out, but B, this is going to go back to Ryan and staff, and they will look at it again before we make a final decision. So I'm not sure when that'll be. I'm sure they'll work as diligently as they can. Okay, so that completes 7.1 for this evening. Then we'll move on to 7.2, and this is RPT-21-64. This is ZBA 10/19 DN. And this is 87 and 89 Dumfries Street. And like they say, this is kind of deja vu all over again, because we have seen something very similar to this before. So we'll go to the planner now. And who's presenting this evening on this one? You guys don't put your name on it, so that's why I don't know.
Little trick to the trade there. The ZBA 1019 DN is the initials, typically the initials of the planner.
You know what? I should know that. So okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have shared my screen with the presentation. This application, like you mentioned, it has come before committee before at this level for information. So the subject lands property is located at 8789 Dumfries Street. The agent is J.H. Cahoon Engineering. The applicant is a numbered company. And again, the recommendation this evening is that the item be received for information purposes. And previously, this was presented for information back on April 2nd, 2019. So just provide you some context. This property is located in the south end of Paris, west of Washington Street at Dumfries Street and Catherine Street. The official plan designates the subject lands as urban residential. The zoning bylaws currently zoned R2, which residential singles and semis. The surrounding area consists of, it's an established residential area, consists of single detached dwellings and semi-detached dwellings, kind of a mix of 1 and 2 story. The area is fully serviced by municipal infrastructure. A little bit of history, as you can see on the slide in the presentation. The subject lands were subject to consent application to create two single lots, proposing 2 semi-detached dwellings, which would have provided a total of 4 residential units. The subject lands changed owners in 2017, and in 2019, you were presented the proposal, which is very similar, in fact, unchanged from 2019. So we are back to just because of the amount of time that has passed, we thought it was appropriate to recirculate to the public and to council for your benefit. So the proposal is requesting to change the zoning from residential singles R2 to provide special exceptions and site-specific provisions to permit a street fronting townhome with site-specific provisions relating to lot frontage, street setback for the attached garage, street setback for the habitable portion of the dwelling, as well as a reduction in the required parking spaces. Each unit would be required to provide 2 parking spaces on site. This site is proposed to provide 1 parking space within the garage on site. However, the applicants will explain they have a solution to the parking. In terms of the public comment, so we did circulate again. There were some duplication in the letters that you received. A lot of the residents did provide comments again from 2019. And those were included in your package. The concerns related to parking, to the character of the neighborhood, and the challenging site given the slope. In terms of next steps, again, so we're continuing to receive comments, and we will circulate to the public again when it does come back for a recommendation meeting. The applicant and their consultant are present this evening and will provide a more detailed presentation on what types of zoning provisions they're looking for. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, and then leave it up to the applicants to present some more information.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Yeah, before we go to the applicant, I'll turn to the committee and see if there's any questions for Dan before we go to the applicant. Okay, seeing none, then we'll call the applicant, and you guys want to identify yourselves and where you live, and then talk about this application.
Sure, I'm Josh Thiessen, and I live in St. George, just off on Victor Boulevard there.
And I'm Dave Dorino, and I'm in Brantford.
So go ahead and yeah, do your presentation, and then we'll go from there.
Perfect, thank you.
Just before I do that, do you want me to share screen here, Dan, or do you have it there that you can put up?
Yep, I can pull that up if you want. Just give me a little indicator when you would like me to change slides.
Okay, yeah, perfect.
Excellent.
I'll give you a shout, Dan, when I see anything. Okay, we're good.
Perfect. All right, thanks, Dan. So, yeah, as Councillor Miller had indicated, this is a bit of deja vu because it's really very similar presentation that we gave, although we went away with a bunch of studies that we had to complete, and in order to take care of some of the planning's questions and requirements. We'll kind of go through those as we go through the presentation here. If we start, essentially we bought this, like Dan said, back in 2017. Where we got it now is, essentially allows for 4 units on this site. But if you've been on Dumfries Street there, you'll see essentially it's steep all along that south side is fairly steep, right? And this lot is no exception. There's housing all along the south side except for this site, which when we got it, there would have been some work done there. But certainly it's kind of an eyesore that needs to be manicured and have housing put up there in order to keep the area looking nice, because like as it stands now, it's not spectacular, and we're looking forward to doing that. So when we originally had the original site plan had 4 units on here for 2 semis. We'll show you a picture of that site plan, and it was fairly tight. The issue with the site is that it kind of goes from back, it goes to front. It's a very steep slope. And then when you kind of go from the left side of it, if you're looking at the kind of south side to the north side, there's also a slope that way. So when you're dealing with the foundations and the various slopes and where your building will be placed from a building perspective, not from a building perspective, it needs that needs to be taken into consideration when deciding what to put up here. So in our opinion, 4 units was unfeasible from an engineer's perspective. It was also unfeasible, in the amount of retaining walls that you would have had to put in there would have not been doable. Okay, so the 4 units wouldn't have made sense. That's why we reduced kind of the complete site down. Instead of doing the 2 semis and the 3-row towers, it makes sense from a build perspective and from a perspective in order to get this stuff developed.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Could we direct the speaker to speak into the microphone of the computer? Because I think a lot of us are having a hard time.
Very
there
hard
might be
to
a
hear.
choppiness, and for those watching at home, it'll probably be they just won't be able to hear.
Yeah, can you guys, try and speak directly into the mic because it is a little bit choppy. So.
Oh, sorry. We just switched mics there. Is that any better?
That's a lot better.
Oh, okay, fantastic. You know what? You probably didn't want to hear all that anyway. But essentially,
we didn't catch it, but it's a lot clearer.
So, like I said, it's steep back to front, and then from left to right. So, obviously through Cahoons and through we did a bunch of studies here in order to make something fit. And that would look good and not necessarily cram up that whole site. And the retaining walls, we didn't want them too large. So this was kind of the best scenario. So this is Dumfries Street.
He's not seeing that. Dan, can you flip to the slide with the housing picture? Yeah.
So essentially, here's Dumfries Street. You'll see the red line, right, kind of coming down, and that's kind of where this the front of the housing is now. You'll see kind of the bottom of that picture is our property there. The thought here is you see on the south side, the houses are pushed in to the street. I think historically that was built there because of the slope that's behind everyone, right? So based on the modification of zoning, what we're looking to do here is push ours not as close to the road as the houses here, but closer up, because ultimately the foundation walls that have to be put in, there'd be we had to dig way too far into the earth, and the retaining walls and the construction of the home itself. I think the walls would be too dangerous during construction, and I think ultimately it wouldn't be in keeping with the street as it sits now, because right now you kind of got them, all the houses along the street are pushed up closer to the street. Ours would push up closer, not quite as close as these ones, but closer to the street, because ultimately our front of our porch would have to kind of start almost at the back of all those houses there, in order for us to meet the current zoning. So the modification would bring us closer to what the street looks like and the streetscape looks like right now. If you can go to the next one, Dan, there. There's a picture in the summertime of the property there. It's overgrown. There's the neighboring property, and you'll see that looking down Dumfries Street. Catherine Street's to your right there. Okay, so Catherine Street intersects our property kind of midway through at the halfway point. And so half of our street, is on kind of the north side of the property, sorry, and the other side's towards the dead end, where there's a few houses on the dead end other side, and obviously we're on the south side of Dumfries there. You'll see kind of the character of the neighborhood there. Parking is an issue along here in some of the places. There's these 2 houses do have parking, and you can see those. Some of the others do not have parking, and so obviously the parking, having houses pushed up onto the street, creates some parking issues for the housing along there. And so obviously we'd have to deal with that in our particular property, because we want to keep our cars off the street for plowing, for parking issues with other vehicles along the street. And that was raised by a variety of the neighbors. And ultimately we want to be able to take care of that, to keep our cars, allow for 2 parking spaces off the street. And I think we'll show you a diagram of how that's going to be accomplished, and might bring some clarity to some folks. So if you look here, here's another picture of the street looking down Dumfries. If you move down a little bit on there's the original site plan, and you'll notice kind of the sides of the property is really tight. As far as and this is standard, like I know Lozani up on top of the hill, and everyone's got tight houses these days, but you'll see here that it's very tight to the property lines, right, to the minimums. But the problem with that is because of the slopes, you would have had to have a massive retaining wall on the other side, which I think is not in keeping with what I think the community would want, and I think would look odd there. And this was the original side view of the foundation that would have to be put in place under these. These are actually incorrect from the original owner that was passed on to us. The truth of the matter is, if we go to the next slide, Dan, this is what the side profile would look like if if we weren't moved forward.
Yeah,
Okay.
the setback wasn't.
So as you can see, the foundation walls there, okay, you got, foundation walls from bottom to top is significantly high right up into the eaves of the house. Okay, because every house in that street is pushed up. The reason is because of the hill, so you need to kind of keep it closer to the street to have any kind of build out there, right? And so where we put the red line, right, is proposed, where we would push it up to, which would make the housing fit in nicely and have a nice walkout. You'd have a walkout the back with the retaining walls proposed. You have a kind of 30-foot backyard, and you have a walkout at the back of the house from the top floor. So you'd walk out onto your backyard and have the retaining walls behind. Okay, because these kind of walls are, they'd be unfeasible. If we go down a little bit, there's the revised site plans. You'll see there's significantly more green space in the usage of this property. You'll notice it's pushed off the property lines, and there's the retaining walls that would be put in place, which could be terrace gardens and actually look pretty appealing, as opposed to just a straight wall. You'll take a note there. This is, if you note at the bottom there, it's kind of on this site plan here, and that what you're looking at now, there's the green truck, an F-250 truck. That's the largest truck that you can possibly get, and there's the car in the garage. You'll notice the sidewalk would be, if you had a sidewalk, that would be the sidewalk below where the truck's kind of coming up to, and then the street is kind of the heavy line at the bottom, right? So I know technically, from a technical point of view, you can't. It's not called off-street parking because the road allowance kind of comes into past that sidewalk where the current sidewalk is and where we go. But with the is keeping with the intent of parking is this proposition where essentially the biggest truck you could possibly get sitting in your driveway, and then you're sitting in your other cars in the garage. And so I think that's similar in keeping with any other new development that's going on in the county, and kind of alleviates, I would think, some of the concerns on parking with that. And we can, I think Dan might be able to explain it a little bit further, but ultimately the city staff did their study as far as the, it's really off, it's in your parking lots where you're parked. There's no need at this with a dead end street to expand the road by another 5 meters and then eat up to that parking to the park. And that sidewalk's in place. And the sidewalk is congruous with all the other sidewalk along the streets, just a straight shot. So it kind of gives you a good picture of that.
Hi, just to the presenters, I just want to know you have 1 minute remaining.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then the only other thing that in what we went back and did, the request from council was to get slope stabilities done, just to show that it was able to be built in a safe manner. And so we've done that. Those studies are done, they're completed, and they're in compliance. And then we've got Bob from Cahoons here if you have any questions regarding that.
And so with that, with the geotechnical slope stability and the, with the site plan incorporated where the water goes, essentially our slope plans, there's no different type of construction here in relation to the footings or foundation. The ground is with the retaining wall system, which is engineered, then is fully engineered and stamped, and it's very safe. So.
Okay, thank you very much. That was actually a very informative presentation, and that 10 minutes went fast. Can we unshare that screen so we can see all the participants in the meeting? Thank you. I'll look at the committee. Is there anybody that has a question for the applicant at this time regarding whether the slope stability or parking or any of that? Okay, I don't see any hands up, so I'll declare this part of the meeting open to the public and ask if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application.
Mr. Chair, there are no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay, thank you. Having said that, we do have quite a few letters in our package regarding this, and I believe the applicants, you guys have seen those letters, have you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've gone through them. Part of the planning that we did was to satisfy those. So they really surrounded about parking, a little bit about traffic flow. I think we've had people from the county look at that too, and didn't express too much concern. And then just the architecturally.
Hold on, guys. We'll stop you right there. I'm just I just want to make sure you did receive those letters.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, I did.
Yeah. The answer is yes. And I'll ask a second time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. And I'll ask a third time if there's anyone that wishes to speak to this application. And hearing none, I'll close this part of the meeting to the public, and I'll bring it back to the committee, and I'll ask if there's a motion on the floor to receive this. Moved by Councillor Coleman, second by Councillor Gatward. Is there any questions or discussion at this point? Okay, seeing none. Yeah, gentlemen, thank you very much. Let's call the vote. All in favor? Okay, so as you guys know, this is just for information tonight. This will go back to the planning staff, and at some point in the future, they'll come forward with a recommendation on yours. Okay, so thank you very much, gentlemen.
Very good. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too. As well.
This will bring us to item 7.3, and this is RPT-21-63. This is an official plan amendment, as well as a zoning bylaw amendment, and this is from for Lafarge at 1044 Colburn Street West. And I'll ask, I see KD stands for Kayla, so I'll go to Kayla if you wish to present.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to share my screen.
And I'll give you a shout when it's up.
Okay.
We're good.
Great. Good evening to the chair, council, and members of the public. The application before us tonight is an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application, and it's been submitted by MHPC Planning on behalf of Lafarge Canada. The purpose of tonight's meeting or presentation this evening is for information purposes only. The proposal seeks to redesignate and rezone the property located at 1044 Colburn Street West to permit an extractive use, which would essentially be the expansion of the existing Lafarge pit, which is directly east of the subject lands. The lands are currently being farmed and include a single detached dwelling. And several studies have been submitted as part of this complete planning application, including hydrogeological studies, environmental, archaeological, air, traffic, noise, etc. In terms of the official plan, the lands are designated as agricultural, and the aggregate resource extraction is noted as an important secondary use in the agricultural designation. But the application is required to redesignate the lands as noted as an official plan policy. The subject lands are also currently zoned agricultural, and the applicants are proposing to rezone to an extractive use. I should also note that as part of the application, the Aggregate Resources Act is also a requirement. And the Aggregate Resources Act is the ARA process, and it is very much a parallel process to the Planning Act. And so the applicants are currently through that process as well at this time. That process I wanted to sort of point out is that it also goes above and beyond Planning Act requirements in terms of notice and circulation and consultation with neighbors and the public. So that's another important thing to note. In terms of our next steps, planning staff have circulated the application and will be receiving comments from internal and external agencies. We will be preparing a staff report, which will make a recommendation, and we will bring that forward to council. I do have the applicant and agent with us tonight to do a quick presentation as well. I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, thanks, Kayla. I'll get you to stop sharing your screen and I'll look at the committee. Is there any questions for the planner at this time? Yeah, Councillor Gower, go ahead.
Thank you. Is the house occupied, and will it stay occupied when the when and if this gets approval and the extraction starts?
Through the chair to Councillor Gatward, I am aware that there is currently a tenant in the house at this time, and the applicant and agent can speak further to whether or not that tenant will be there in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gatward. Any other questions from committee? I know I've got a few, but those are for the applicant. So, okay, we'll go to the applicant. You have a presentation or you want to speak to it, and keeping in mind, we do have a 10-minute limit unless we as a committee decide, we need to extend it, but we'll try and keep to the 10 minutes. And who wishes to speak to this?
I'll be speaking. I'm just going to get, I have a presentation here. I'm just going to bring it up. Let me know when.
Identify yourself and who are you speaking for?
Yes, of course. Let me just bring up my presentation here. One second.
I'll give you a shout when I see it.
Okay.
And we're live there.
Excellent. Okay, good evening, Chair Miller, committee members, staff, and any members of the public present. My name is Caitlin Port. I'm an associate with MHBC Planning, here tonight to provide a project overview and introduction to the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for the proposed Lafarge Canada Brantford Pit extension. I'm also joined this evening by Lafarge representative Luke McLeod. And I have a fairly brief presentation. I'll try not to repeat too much of what Kayla has already provided this evening. And then, of course, we'll be happy to answer any questions and listen to any comments that the committee or members of the public may have. All right. So just a bit about the property. The property itself is located west of the city of Brantford, with frontage along Colburn Street. It's actually located just southwest of the airport. And as Kayla mentioned, it is located immediately adjacent to the Lafarge existing Brantford pit, which is this property with the black outline. And so the proposed extension, of course, is this property in the red outline here. The majority of the property is in an active agricultural condition and has been for quite some time. There is a existing house on the property, as Kayla mentioned, and I'll let Luke chat about that just at the end of the presentation, as well as some farm buildings as well. There's a small dugout pond that you can see in the center of the property. This is not a significant natural heritage feature. And this property is located in a predominantly rural and agricultural area of the county. And this is also actually an area of existing as well as historical and ongoing aggregate extraction. In terms of the Brantford Pit Extension project, the area proposed to be redesignated, rezoned, as well as licensed under the ARA, that's the Aggregate Resources Act, is about 20 hectares in size, with a proposed extraction area of about 17 hectares once you apply the regulatory Aggregate Resources Act setbacks. The purpose of the pit extension is to replace the depleting reserves at the existing pit. Currently, the existing pit supplies predominantly granular products to the Brantford and surrounding area. Extraction at the extension pit will be very similar in terms of the scale of operations and the nature of the operations at the existing pit. We're proposing three phases of extraction that will occur both above and below the water table, and each phase of extraction will be followed closely by progressive rehabilitation, and this is to minimize the amount of disturbance on the site. Because the extension is replacing reserves at the existing pit, there's no increase in the historical average annual tonnage proposed. The existing pit, if you remember, just back a slide, will actually use the existing scales that are located, the extension will use the existing scales located on the existing pit, as well as the existing pit entrance onto Colburn Street. So there's no change in truck volumes or any of the current use of Colburn Street as a haul route for the pit extension. And the final land use of the pit extension will be a lake, which will be joined with the existing pit. We're also looking to create some shallow areas in the north end, as well as areas surrounded by naturalized slopes. And this was a rehab plan that was put together in consultation with the County of Brant staff. As Kayla mentioned, we've completed a total of 9 studies in addition to the Aggregate Resources Act site plan. These studies were completed as part of the county official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, as well as the ARA application. These technical studies include recommendations to control and minimize potential impacts and provide appropriate mitigation measures where required. All of the report recommendations and mitigation measures are included on the Aggregate Resources Act site plan, and I actually have a couple of screenshots I'll show you in a few slides. So I've mentioned this a few times, and Kayla brought it up as well. In addition to the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, municipal County of Brant approvals, the Brantford Pit Extension is also required to apply for an Aggregate Resources Act license. And this is an application that's made to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. To the extent possible, we are trying to align the ARA process with the Planning Act process, just in order to work through both applications concurrently and streamline the processes as much as we can. The ARA application was submitted to the MNRF in early January 2021. That application has been deemed complete by MNRF, and we're just in the process of getting things ready to trigger our required notification and circulation, hoping to start that process this month. And that notification and consultation process will include circulation of the ARA application to both local and provincial review agencies, including the GRCA. The county will get another copy, Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, of course, the Ministry of the Environment, and OMAFRA. Oh, and I just wanted to mention too, I've tried to lay out a very complex provincial regulatory process in these blue blocks here, and you can see that we're just still in the very early stages of this process. Again, this is just a reminder, this is the ARA process here. There's also public and Indigenous community consultation requirements as part of the ARA. Like I said, we're just getting things ready to go, hoping to start those processes this month. That being said, back in February 2020, when we initiated our consultation with the County of Brant, Lafarge did also notify the neighbors to the extension, as well as neighbors to the existing pit, that this project would be underway shortly. There was a letter that was sent out, as well as a project handout. So as part of the ARA notification and consultation requirement, there will be a notice sign posted on the property. There will be a notice that will be published in the Brantford newspaper. Additional, more formal letters will be sent to adjacent landowners, and there will be opportunities as well to meet with the applicant to ask any questions. And of course, those will all be held virtually at this time because of COVID-19 restrictions. We also have a project website set up, so you can go to that website now. You can access and download copies of the reports, the site plans. We'll be posting project updates to that website, and there is contact information available as well. And in addition, Lafarge has also initiated consultation with local Indigenous communities as well. So this is just a screenshot showing that handout that was mailed to the extension neighbors as well as the existing pit neighbors in 2020. And I believe that this is also available on the project website to download. This is, sorry, it's going to be very difficult for you to see, especially if you're at home looking on an iPad, but I just wanted to give you a sense of what the ARA site plan looks like. This is page 2 of the site plan, the operations plan. There's just a few key things that I wanted to point out on this plan, which unfortunately you won't be able to read on the screen. As I mentioned, you can see that there's 3 phases of extraction proceeding from south to north. There's acoustical screening berms that are included around the perimeter of phase 3 in the north end. So that's those kind of green blobs that you see. There's also processing restrictions included on this site plan in words and then also shown on the drawing. And that's to ensure that there's no MECP noise guidelines exceedances. We're not proposing any recycling activities. We're not proposing any importation of fill. There's requirements to control dust on site, which are included on this plan, as well as requirements for an annual hydrogeological monitoring program, in addition to a best management practices plan for fuel handling and a spills contingency plan. So that's just some of the key highlights I wanted to point out for you.
Hi, Caitlin. I just want to say you have 1 minute left.
Perfect. I have 1 slide left, so perfect timing. This is the rehabilitation plan that I was talking about. Again, just shows some of the features that will be created through extraction, which is that lake surrounded by natural side slopes and some shallow water features in the north end, along with some wildlife habitat creation. And that's it. Thank you very much. We're happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Caitlin. I'll go to the committee, and are there any questions from the committee? Councillor Gatward, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Caitlin. The 17 hectares that are being extracted, what number of hectares will end up in water when this is finished in the pond?
Through you, Chair Miller, I don't have the exact number of hectares because we do have to have those naturalized side slopes. So it'll be less than 17 hectares, but not much less than 17 hectares.
So much like McGregor Lake almost to the east.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with McGregor Lake, but if that's the site that's just located to the east, it will be somewhat similar.
Yeah, you have a current existing.
Yeah, it's on our site map.
Water feature within your existing licensed area. And then just to the east is McGregor Road, and McGregor Lake is shown there. And it's quite large. I don't believe we've had any issues at our airport wellhead. You mentioned this is almost across the road from the airport. And I'm sure you realize we have municipal wells there that provide water for that area. And the annual hydrogeological monitoring that you mentioned would happen. Does that go not only to the Ministry of Environment, but also to the county and our water department and anybody else that needs that information?
Through you, Chair Miller. Thank you for that question. We can certainly make sure that that wording is included on the site plan, that the county is circulated a copy of the annual hydrogeological monitoring report. I can't recall off the top of my head if we've already incorporated that language, but if it hasn't been, that's certainly something that we can look to do.
Thank you. And you mentioned that you would be rehabilitating each phase as you went along. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair Miller. Yes, the intent is to minimize the disturbed area to the extent feasible through progressive rehabilitation. Actually, if you look at the air photo of the existing pit, you can kind of see, now the phasing for that pit is quite a bit different, but you can see that some progressive rehabilitation has already occurred in that pit. You can see what those naturalized side slopes might look like. And I'll just, if Luke wants to add any additional comments to that answer, I'd like I think that would be appropriate for him to do so.
Yeah, I guess we can't see the existing pit from Colburn Street West, so it's hard to tell if it's been rehabilitated or not. And I did have that question written down, so it would be nice to see a real picture of it. Thank you.
Through Chair Miller, Councillor Gatward, you are correct. We are still undergoing progressive rehabilitation on the existing site. What we are aiming to do in terms of the vision for the two properties in general, as Caitlin has tried to indicate, that we're going to be joining them in sort of one large pond feature. I am a bit more familiar with McGregor Lake, and that would be the idea, where you have sort of this pond feature with rehabilitated slab slopes surrounding it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? You see none, I will ask a couple questions. Just to the applicants. Sorry, given that it's a wellhead protection zone, what will you be doing different on this pit, say, versus a pit that isn't on a wellhead protection zone?
Yeah, Councillor Miller, in terms of our hydrogeological recommendations associated with the site plan, our main goal is to, continue to monitor the site, including our existing operations as well. What we do know from our hydrogeological work is that there'd be little impact to the wellhead protection area in this area. Further, as Caitlin indicated in some of her presentation materials as well, Lafarge has an existing best management practice in terms of a spill mitigation containment for the site as well. So we'll be implementing that for the site.
Okay. And the site that we're looking at doing an official plan amendment for, the 17 hectares in size, correct? I believe it is. And right now it's currently being farmed, and the intent is to return none of it to agricultural land at this present time. Is that correct?
Yes, Councillor Miller, that is correct. There's high quality aggregate reserves below water in this area. So there's good reasoning to suggest that the low water extraction occur.
Okay. I know things change based on market conditions and whatnot, but what's the projected tonnage taken out of there per year? And how long do you expect this pit to last?
Yeah, Councillor Miller, that's a great question, and you certainly hit the nail on the head with respect to changing market conditions. Currently, our Brantford location typically extracts, anywhere between 300 and 500,000 tons per year. The intention would be to continue to supply the local Brantford market, certainly subject to change. In terms of a specific timeline associated with the site, again, this is very, very hard to distinguish, but I would anticipate in the 15 to 25 year range.
Okay, so my math's not so good, but 300 to 500, well, actually it is, but 300 to 500,000, are we looking at about 20 trucks additional? Well, I guess if you're pulling out now, we wouldn't see any additional trucks.
That's
right?
correct, Councillor Miller.
We'd still be at 10 to 20 or how many?
Correct. A main tenet in this application is the entrance exit existing onto Colburn Street. The same sort of typical truck traffic that you would see, the trucks using the same entrance. In terms of how the community may see this operation from the street, it would essentially be the same.
Okay. And my last question, did you have a public meeting, or as public a meeting as we can, given have you met with the neighbors or anything like that?
Yes, Councillor Miller, I had the opportunity to send out the information flyers last fall. I was able to meet with one interested neighbor in a social distance setting to discuss the application as well. As Caitlin has indicated, through the ARA application process, we will be providing times where the applicant can meet with us virtually to discuss any questions or concerns they may have. So we'll certainly provide opportunity for the public to comment on this as well.
Appreciate the answers. Before we go for a motion, is there anybody else, or before we go to the public, is there anybody else from the committee that has a question? Okay, Councillor McGovern, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One other thing I thought of, along Colburn Street West, some of that asphalt has been beat up fairly well. The county is going to be making intersection improvements at the corner of Forest Road, FORCED, and Bishopsgate Road. And that will happen in the next few years. There could be lights installed there because the city is building, or the developer is building a large subdivision at the edge of the county. Would Lafarge be willing to help with intersection improvements?
Through the chair to Councillor Gatward, Lafarge has undertaken a traffic study associated with this application, and based on the technical recommendations, that's what we've included on our site plan. I'm not aware, or wasn't aware of, the intersections improvement plan at the county. So at this time, we wouldn't certainly commit to anything today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And it's a different, well, it's a city subdivision, not a county subdivision. So perhaps our planner isn't aware of it, but others are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gatward. And there may be a few other requests along the way. Okay, seeing no other hands up, I'll turn this meeting over to the public, and I'll ask if there's anyone from the public that wishes to address this application. I'll ask our clerk.
Hi, Mr. Chair. There are no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay, thank you. And I'll ask a second time, is there anyone from the public that wishes to address this application? I'll ask a third time. Okay, seeing nobody from the public here tonight to speak to this particular application, I will close this part of the meeting off to the public, and I'll bring it back to committee, and I'll ask for a motion to receive, moved by Mayor Bailey, second by Councillor Pierce. Is there any further discussion on this before we move on? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Okay, approved. Again, to Luke and to Caitlin, I think you guys kind of understand the process. This is just for information purposes. It'll go back to Kayla. She'll work with it, and at some point we expect to see a recommendation in the future. Given the nature of yours, I expect that might be a few months away. I don't expect that next month. So, but thank you very much for coming out. I appreciate that. Okay, so we are going to move on now to 7.4, and this is RPT-21-61. PSO 408, and this is Brant Star Developments Limited, Stony Bridge Phase 3 in St. George, and I'll turn it over to our planner and have them start. So go ahead. I see they got it up already.
So you can see it okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Through the chair. Thank you. The original plan of subdivision included all three phases for a total of 153 single family dwelling units. Phases 1 and 2 were approved in 2009 and 2015 for a total of 63 units plus 2 blocks for future development due to servicing restraints. Phase 3 was presented to the Planning Advisory Committee initially in 2019 and is being presented again due to the time that has passed. Through phase 3, the applicants are proposing 63 single detached dwelling units that will be on full municipal services. It is staff's understanding the full development of the Stony Ridge subdivision, including the proposed phase 3 lands, were considered when completing the engineering drawings / documents for phases 1 and 2. Development engineering has provided preliminary comments noting that except for some fairly minor revisions to address current engineering standards, the engineering drawings are nearly completed to the satisfaction of the county. The subject lands are designated as urban residential and are located within the primary urban settlement boundary. The intent of the urban residential designation is to allow for residential uses, including low, medium, and high density uses. The subject lands are currently zoned as holding residential singles. The zoning category does permit single detached dwellings. However, the holding provision will need to be removed through a future rezoning application once capacity is available when the St. George Water Pollution Control Plant is upgraded. And then in terms of supporting documents, the applicant has submitted a number of studies, including a planning justification report, engineering submission package, geotechnical hydrological assessment, a traffic impact study, and an archaeological assessment, in addition to an environmental site assessment. And then in terms of next steps, staff will be preparing a recommendation report, which will include the subdivision draft plan conditions. I'm happy to answer any questions committee may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Any questions for Amanda at this time? And Amanda, I'll get you to stop sharing your screen.
Just have to figure out how to do that.
Okay. Okay.
Thank
That's
you.
perfect. Okay, appreciate it. Any questions for Amanda at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'll turn it over to the applicant or their agent. If they're here tonight, I suspect so. Amanda, who we got here? Is it Joe?
Me and Doug will be, and Doug's got the lead.
Okay.
If he's supposed to be online. Yep.
I may be, and I apologize. I'm here as the planner, and Mr. Cahoon is the engineer. We're here to answer any questions. We've been working with staff. We look forward when the application will come back for a recommendation and then a decision. So we're here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Are there any questions for the applicant or their agent? Okay, seeing none. I just have one question then. Why are we? I guess maybe through the planner. I don't know, or it might be to the applicant. We've seen this in the past. We've obviously seen it tonight, and the public can look at it. I'm just wondering why are we seeing it tonight, given that the servicing constraints, I don't see them being going away in the near future. It's still a few years away. Can somebody help me with that?
And perhaps I could start it.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Stewart.
So we've got a plan of subdivision that's been through the process.
Yep.
And has and all in fact, like, we firmly believe that it is at a stage where the approval could occur and that it would be subject to conditions. One of the conditions that I think is the key is the removal of the holding. And part of the request is to ensure that all plans in St. George are equal and that they could advance soon as the servicing could occur. And in fact, it is our understanding, because this is just the logical extension of existing infrastructure and that it's all planned, it already has been amended to the bylaw. There is no change going to occur to this plan. It is appropriate at this time to provide the approval, and as such that when there is capacity, as planned could proceed as expeditiously as possible and meet the demands for housing.
Okay, I appreciate that. Councillor Wheat, you wanted to share something?
I was just going to try and help you, and I think it's just to keep us keep this application before us and not so that we don't forget it. I'm very pleased with this development. It's taken a number of years to grow. When you start at the south end by the doctor's office, now we're up behind the fire hall and the library. This has been about a 17-year project. And when it'll be completed, once we get the servicing available, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. I wish other developments, particularly in the north and south of Paris, and the Paris councillors would be a lot happier if their subdivisions grew as slowly as this one did, because people don't even know they build another half a dozen houses every year.
Thank you, Councillor Wheat. Any other questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, Councillor Wheat, go ahead.
Yeah, it's inappropriate, but a question to Joe. You've still got lots of lots down on Patton, don't have a house built on, but they're approved. It's just because we don't have enough capacity with water and sewer. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. There's 11 units left to be completed in phase 2B, and there is no capacity. We tried borrowing capacity from the seniors complex, but we were unsuccessful, and we understand why. But other than that, we're waiting for additional capacity, in which will normally be provided once the sewage plant is in operation, the new sewage plant.
Okay. And I believe you guys know where we're at with that. We just, I think we're going to the public with the VA for that, for public input. Okay. See no other questions. I'm going to open this application up to this part of the meeting, I'll open up to the public. And again, I look to you, Adam. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this application?
Hi, Mr. Chair. No, there are no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay, and I'll ask a second time. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application? And I'll ask a third time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. He's seeing and hearing none. I'll close this part of the meeting off to the public, and I'll ask for a motion to receive the information. Moved by Councillor Wheat, second by Mayor Bailey. Any discussion before we call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay, Mr. Stewart and Mr. Cahoon, Joe, thank you very much for the presentation tonight, and we look forward to seeing it again in the near future.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a good evening. This will bring us to item 7.5. This is RPT-21-74-ZBA 1021. And this is from Prolific Estates Limited, 48 Fairfield Road. And I believe, Amanda, this is you up, so I'll let you go ahead. And I see your screen's up. So
Thank you, through the chair. Just getting my notes. The applicant is proposing to create two undersized farm parcels. The southerly farm parcel is expected to have an area of approximately 35 hectares and is to be farmed. The northerly lot is expected to have an area of 16.18 hectares in order to facilitate a commercial greenhouse operation. While the term commercial greenhouse is being used to describe the proposal, staff note the proposal is for an agricultural operation, and the term commercial is a term from the zoning bylaw that is used to differentiate from a farm greenhouse. The greenhouse will be used as an agricultural operation specifically for the growing of cut flowers for wholesale, retail, and auction customers. The subject lands are designated agricultural and will continue to be used for agricultural operations. The intent of the agricultural designation is to ensure that prime agricultural land and the agricultural activities and lifestyle of the county branch are protected and have the opportunity to flourish. And then in regards to zoning, the subject lands are currently zoned agricultural, and the applicant is proposing site-specific provisions to facilitate a commercial greenhouse that is representative of the current industry standards. And then through the site plan control process, a detailed review of servicing, grading, site design, and lighting will be reviewed in order to ensure there is no impact on the surrounding properties. And then in regards to next steps, staff will be preparing a recommendation report that speaks specifically to policy and comments received through the planning process. And I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee members may have.
okay, thank you, Amanda. Okay, I know there's a few questions. Okay, we'll start with you, Councillor Gower. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Amanda, you mentioned there's going to be commercial. retail, where will that be?
Thank you through the chair. So the term commercial speaks specifically in regards to the size and the scale of the greenhouse, not specifically in terms of the operation. There won't be a traditional retail storefront. There won't be a brick and mortar store. The term commercial is specifically in regards to the scale.
Okay, when you said commercial retail, I thought, oh, they're going to have a little flower shop. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay. Anybody else have questions for the planner? Okay, I've got a couple then. Amanda, when this comes forward for a recommendation and say it goes through, we are looking at a rezoning per se, and we're approving not just this greenhouse but the future greenhouses. Is that correct? And I know it has to do with the zoning. I got that, but what we also approved is the site zoning, right? A site plan, and would that site plan also apply to, say, the future greenhouses indicated on the map?
Thank you through the chair. So this rezoning application is just to establish the use and then also site specific provisions for the current proposed greenhouse. Any future greenhouses would need to be evaluated in terms of the site specific provisions if they're approved, or any zoning, any current zoning standards we do have. And then it potentially would need to go through a site plan amendment process as well to reflect any future upgrades.
Okay, and that the way we have it set up now, that would be done strictly at a staff level.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, so this would be the only chance we got to see it. Okay, because one of the concerns, obviously, in the letter was lighting, and I understand that. I think that's something that should definitely be in the site process there. Then another question I have is regarding water usage. This would all be done through the MOE, through a permit to take water. So would it be up to them to determine water quantity, or would it be the county's responsibility, or would it be part of the site process?
Thank you through the chair. I believe that process would be a combined process, but I can confirm that through my recommendation report, and the applicant might actually have some more information on that as well.
Okay. Yeah, because that's obviously, it would be a concern to the neighbors, would be the water as well. So, okay. Matt, were you going to jump in, or should you? Okay.
Yep. Well, I was just going to mention that when it comes to private wells, it's a provincial matter. Water taking is a provincial matter.
But I guess, yeah, and at that point, they would need that permit to take water, would they not, for an operation of this size?
Yeah, I would assume so, because I would guess it would require a substantial amount of water, and there are thresholds for when permits are required.
I appreciate it's a provincial responsibility when it's a well, but at the same time, we as councillors sometimes have to have the answers in front of us. So that's why.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Matt. Okay. Any other questions for the planner before we go to the applicant or the agent thereof? Okay. See none. Bob, are you speaking to this?
I'll start off. Stephanie Sleeman's with me tonight. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mayor Bailey, thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak tonight. This is a rezoning application. It's a good news story about an existing agricultural operation that's trying to expand and move into the next generation. Obviously, farming's changing as days go along. This is a proposal to create a commercial greenhouse. I'll use that term right now. Basically, it's an agricultural operation that is being put in a greenhouse so that it's climate controlled and allow for the flourishing of the flowers and the product. Yes, we're looking for some site-specific modifications with respect to the size of the parcel. Obviously, it's a farm operation, so they'd like to put a residence on the property, so there's provision for that. nature of this operation, increased height in the greenhouse rather than what's sort of specified in the zoning bylaw is being requested. Light setbacks and parking relief. Well, I think it's pretty obvious the parking relief is, with the type of operation, they don't need a lot of parking. Reduced site setbacks, that is certainly an item that'll be addressed through the site plan approval process, but as I understand it, and I'm sure Stephanie will expand on it, they go to blackout situation, create a controlled environment for the growing of the flowers. I'm going to speak just very briefly on the definition of commercial. We really believe it's a farm greenhouse because really it's an activity that would occur in the field and we're just moving it inside to create that climate control. But, we appreciate the definitions in the zoning bylaw. We've had lots of discussions with staff over that. I understand there's some modifications coming to that definition. The intention here is not to create a retail outlet. Other than that, we're just trying to move this application along. And maybe what I'll do is just kind of turn it over to Stephanie to do a bit of a presentation about the family and the operation in specifics. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Yeah, I see the Slayman's there. I guess, Stephanie, you're going to speak to this. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Chair. Thank you through the chair to all the councillors and the mayor today. And thank you to Amanda for her presentation. And thank you to Bob for starting us off. I'm Stephanie Slayman, and with me I have Brian Slayman and Teo Slayman. We're the current management team. And of course, Brian Slayman is the owner operator. I'm just going to share my screen for a brief presentation.
Okay, Stephanie, I'll give you a shout when I see it being shared. And we're good.
Excellent, thank you. So John Slayman Greenhouses Limited is owned and operated by Brian Slayman, who has over 35 years of floriculture greenhouse owner operator experience. We produce year-round floriculture products that are protected under the Farming and Food Production Protection Act. These products are sensitive, live agriculture products that require a specialized growing conditions, inputs that are monitored and controlled within an environment that's aided by the greenhouse structure. The two product lines are chrysanthemums and lisianthus, and these are grown from seed or cutting to finished floriculture product in the climate-controlled greenhouse. Products are grown directly in ground with the use of overhead lighting, line and overhead watering, heating, and side and overhead blackout and heat curtains for light and temperature control to facilitate the creation of this ideal growing environment. The cut flowers are then sold as a finished agriculture product from our site. We were started in 1969, number 1 7th Concession Road in Burford, and you may have heard of us or already seen some of our products at local florists near you. We have over 50 years of operating in Brant County, and we're very proud to be moving into our 3rd generation of ownership. We have a strong community involvement. You may have seen the recent news clippings from last year about our donations as we were all hit by the unexpected COVID-19 pandemic. We're a proud local employer. Excluding ownership salaries, the median wage is $22 per hour for our full-time staff, and the average wage is $22.15 per hour for our over 13 full-time staff. The average full-time staff tenure is over 5.5 years with our company. We're very proud to say that we're able to provide family-style wages that support our staff, and they're happy to stay with us, helping us grow and move forward. Our project is expected to hire an additional 10 to 15 full-time year-round employees at the new site, and this will support our expansion. This next stage of growth for John Slayman Greenhouses Limited is a multi-million-dollar investment into Brant County and will be the foundation of our agribusiness moving forward. Floriculture is a highly competitive industry, and to meet the changing economic and technological conditions with the newest technology, clean energy upgrades, and greenhouse design efficiencies available, we're starting on this new site. This severance will support the land ownership needs as the company transitions and moves through the succession planning, and will also support the sale to John Slayman Greenhouses of the severed portion. The retained parcel will remain within Prolific Estates. I would just like to say through the chair, thank you for your time and consideration of our proposal application. We look forward to working with and continuing to working with the planning department through this process. We'd especially like to thank Amanda for her excellent guidance as we move forward, and the director, Matt Vaughn. So thank you. I'm available for questions. I know there have already been 2 questions raised, and I'm happy to answer those at your convenience. I'll just stop my sharing.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, okay, we'll do, sorry, who was that? What we'll do is we'll open it up to the committee and ask if there's any questions of the applicant or their agent. Councillor Chambers.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the Slaymans. I'm just wondering, I'm well acquainted with the existing operation in the town of Burford. I'm just wondering how this operation will be, if at all, different from what's going on in the town of Burford, which has a stellar reputation, as you have already mentioned.
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Chambers, for your question. There are many differences. As you can imagine, agriculture, technology, and innovation has changed dramatically since the last time we built, which was in 2001. Our current site here at number 1 7th concession is actually quite landlocked for the type of expansion we're looking to do. Amanda wasn't wrong saying the size and scale can be alarming if you haven't seen these facilities before. And we understand that this is a unique project, especially considering some of the recent news or awareness of the changing legislation around cannabis and the opportunities that that provided. We're not a cannabis facility. We have no interest in becoming one. And the current bylaws on the site and the proposed site bylaws that we've put forward for relief also support just floriculture or vegetable growth.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Councillor Chambers. Mayor David Bale, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mine is really just a comment. First of all, we're very lucky to have you people in the county. I'm very excited for you. I'm very familiar with your type of outfit and what you're doing through friends in neighboring communities that I'm very familiar with. And this is the first time that I've publicly been able to thank you for what you did last year. That was very wonderful. I know that you made a lot of people very, very happy, and you didn't ask for anything in return. So thank you for what you do, and congratulations on your expansion. I hope everything goes well.
Are there any questions for the applicant or the agent at this time? Okay, okay, Councillor Goward, and then if no others, I'll ask. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you get all your approvals in place, when do you plan to start building?
I think the answer to that is as soon as we can.
Could I speak for a second?
Yeah, through you, Chair, I'd just like to turn it over to my brother, Teo Slayman, to speak to the building. He'll be managing that.
Yeah, go ahead, Teo.
Okay. Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, so with my experience and my limited experience in construction, conventional construction can be done through the winter without any delays. Greenhouse construction is fundamentally different in the aspect that we use hot water heating as perimeter heating and climate control. It's very difficult to build in the winter, so it's our intention to start as soon as possible to get this project underway while we have the good summer weather. because if we get to the heating stage and it's January and the pipes freeze, that could lead to disaster in the construction phase. And that's something we're trying to avoid. So going through the process is obviously step one, and we hope to get started as soon as we can.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I just have one for the Slamans. Kind of along the same line as Councilor Chambers, a little bit different. I want to talk about the lighting. It's 2021. The last one you built, you said was 2001. That was 20 years ago. Is there better ways of reducing the amount of light pollution? Because I know this obviously one of the neighbors expressed concern about that, but I know we had another greenhouse application before, and there was a lot of neighbors there also concerned about the light pollution. So what would you do different to try and control that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That's an excellent question. And it really does speak to the changes in greenhouse design that started from 2015 onwards. The added height to the greenhouse design, as you'll notice, a secondary request in the bylaw relief is for height from 5 meters to 8 meters. Our height of the building design at the midpoint will be 7.4 meters. And this allows for additional curtaining around the sides and top of the greenhouse structure. Traditional curtaining was used over the planted benches. That's what we currently have in our facility right now at number 1 7th concession. And it's just not sufficient for light emission management. So, speaking to the specific setback of 150 meters, setbacks don't necessarily work well for lighting purposes. And they're very useful for many other factors and management of other nuisance concerns with neighbors, but they don't work for lighting. And what we've seen with other municipalities is they're moving to blackout curtaining requirements. So we are proposing to use a product that's called Obscura 10,070 W/B B/W FR curtain systems. From the supplier, they have a 99% light emission reduction. So that means that this is well above anything that you could expect that's currently on the market. And that means that the light emissions from our facility will be almost 100% controlled by the use of these curtainings around the structure. So we acknowledge that this is different from our current site. And unfortunately, at our current site, because of the height of the structure, we're not able to upgrade. So this was one of the key requirements and business decisions that we made as a management team when we thought about our next stage of the company. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I've always considered light pollution kind of wasted energy. If that, it's going away and it really should be directed towards the plants and blocked up again. Councilor Chambers, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, just one final question, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at the screen and I see generation 3 with Theo and Stephanie and generation 2 with Brian. I don't see generation 1. My question is, what's John think about this?
I can answer that, Mr. Chambers, through the chair. I had to run over to my grandpa's house and actually kick him off the presentation because our Wi-Fi network wasn't that strong. So he's highly involved. He's anxious. He wishes he could be here, but he's not even watching the presentation right now due to our bandwidth. But he'll be watching this tomorrow.
He gives us advice every day on how we can improve. At 88 years old, he's fully engaged.
88 years young. Yeah, I can appreciate that.
Just do what he tells you.
We do our best.
Any other questions for the family at the time? I just one comment to Stephanie. I think you actually mentioned it was brought up. There's talk about you're not growing cannabis, and I appreciate that. And we in the county and many municipalities across Ontario. I don't know about the rest of the Canada. I assume it's the same. We've seen former greenhouses that were growing flowers or cucumbers or tomatoes, whatever, go to cannabis, right? And they weren't built for that. They can't control the odors. They're not controlling the light pollution. And obviously there's issues with security and whatnot. So we can see that being a problem. Having said that, every application that comes before us is based on its own merit. So the fact that you guys have that experience, I mean, it certainly does give me confidence, and I know it gives many of our committee members confidence in this application and what you plan to do with it in the future. So, but just be aware, you know what I mean? There's always that. We always look at, you know, what's coming and what's before us, but sometimes we got to think about, okay, what could be the worst case scenario? And to me, I would hate to see this ever go to a cannabis operation, having, you know, all the problems we have with it. So, yeah, go ahead. You guys want to respond?
The cannabis party in greenhouses is pretty well over. It's a flash in the pan, and that opportunity's gone. Okay. So that's just my political position on that. We're not interested in that. This facility will continue to grow one of our 2 product lines. The other facility will grow a more demanding product line, and we intend to run both these facilities for a long period of time. Okay. I'm going to try and outlive my dad's energy and enthusiasm. So I've got lots of work ahead of me.
Okay, you and I will have we'll carry on this conversation in the future though, because there's some other things going on with that too. So, okay, seeing no other hands up, I'm going to open this part of the meeting up to the public and look to our clerk. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this application?
Mr. Chair, no, there are no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay, I'll ask a second time. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this application? And I'll ask a third time if there's anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this application. Seeing none, I'll close this part of the meeting off to the public, and I'll look to the committee to see how they want to deal with this. We'll go to Mayor Bailey. You have to unmute yourself.
I just want to get on the floor to get voted on, please.
Move to receive. Okay, second by Councillor Gatward. Any further discussion? I just have one question for Amanda. Amanda, does this go to the Ag Advisory Committee, given that we're looking at an undersized parcel?
Thank you to the chair. The Agricultural Committee representative was circulated, and I have not received comments from them as of yet.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. No other further discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none. Okay, so to the Slayman's present tonight, thank you for coming. Again, this was just to receive information. We also got there was nobody from the public here tonight, but we did get some letters, as you probably are aware. So we have all read them. They've all been circulated. And what this is going to do, your application will go back to planning, and they will be bringing it forward. Sounds like sooner rather than later with a recommendation. So thank you very much for coming out, and have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that brings us to our last public hearing under the Plan Act to receive information, RP 7.6, RPT-21-60, ZBA 0421, and I guess that's Amanda as well. And this is regarding the application for 539 Paris Road. So Amanda, go ahead and.
Thank you, through the chair. The applicant is proposing to rezone a portion of the subject lands from agricultural to heavy industrial to allow for consistent zoning across the entire property. The zoning would be consistent with the official plan designation of employment. The applicant is proposing 3 distinct uses on the subject lands. The first being a multi-unit cold storage warehouse facility on the southern half, a multi-unit contractor's yard in the northwest portion, and then a quilting studio workshop in the existing dwelling. And then in regards to the official plan, the subject lands are designated in employment and are located within site-specific policy area 16 and are located within the primary urban settlement area. Hotels and motels are permitted on lands designated as an employment if on an arterial road, which Paris Road has been identified as a rural arterial. And then in terms of the zoning bylaw, the subject lands are currently split zoned as heavy industrial and agricultural. The applicant is proposing to rezone the portion currently zoned as agricultural to heavy industrial, in addition to site-specific provisions to allow for the quilting studio. The subject lands will be subject to site plan control. And then in regards to next steps, staff are awaiting a traffic impact study and will not be proceeding with a recommendation until the study has been received and reviewed by county staff. And then I am happy to answer any questions the committee members may have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. Yeah, I'll just say off the top before we go to questions. It was a hard one to read simply because it seemed like there were so many options and possibilities that I don't even know how to start with this one. So, but we'll go to the committee. Any questions for Amanda at this time? Okay, we'll start with Councillor LaFerrier. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Amanda. I'm just wondering how many, if you know, how many residences and other business tenants receive notice for this, because I have a bit of a difficulty with some of these applications, if only because there are rules about the meters around, and somebody could be a neighbor of somebody or one or two down, but because these are big lots, they don't get notification, and then they're sort of surprised when things happen. What can we do to mitigate that in this case, to make sure that people are fully aware who may be affected by this?
Thank you through the chair. I am not 100% sure of the number of residents who received applications. I can confirm that in my recommendation report, but I can also confirm that notices were mailed within 120 meters of the property, and the Planning Act requires 100 meters, I believe.
Okay.
Matt, go ahead if you want to supplement.
Sure, and I can help jump in there. So we have that 125 meter circulation distance, but if it would help with council's concerns, we could expand that particular circulation just to make sure that we do get to all of the surrounding properties. We can look to see sort of what the appropriate distance would be, but just to make sure it gets the majority of the neighbors that abut this property.
Yeah.
Councilor Ferrier, are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's something to me that I almost wish that as we move forward that we can have some element of, 125 meters as, is dictated by the province, or, all properties that abut and, or a number of some kind for range purposes, because, again, if you live on a big lot, you could be literally the next door neighbor and not get notification. It might have a very big effect on your life, and people do find out, and then they come to council saying, how come I wasn't notified, versus being notified and being part of the process from the beginning. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that comment, and I'll tell you, we've been struggling with that for, well, ever since I've been on the planning committee, but at least we got bigger signs now than those little signs. So Matt, if you don't mind, can you let us know, maybe we can go a little further for this particular application.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually a really good point. And this seems to be a reoccurring question of council. So I would suggest leaving it with us. We've taken this note, and we will look at future circulations to make sure where we have an application being proposed on a big property, that the surrounding neighbors are included as part of that circulation. 125 meters, sometimes it doesn't quite cut it. We'll make sure that at least the surrounding property owners, the ones abutting that property, are circulated on it.
Yeah, I think 125 meters would always be the minimum, and then, make it case specific after that. So I appreciate that. Any other questions for our planner at this time? Councillor Gatward and then Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to staff, there was a letter, quite detailed, sent from a Bill Van News something. I'm not going to try and pronounce the last name. It was in our package, and it was the font was about a 5. It wasn't readable, but when I blew it up on my iPad, I could read it. So I blew it up and then I printed it, and it still came out itty bitty in the 5 font. So it's not readable. Could I please have a paper copy of this letter? Because when I read it, I thought, wow, there's a lot of good questions in this letter or email. And my question to staff, have all these questions been answered?
Thank you through the chair. I can arrange something with clerks in order to get you a paper copy of that commenting letter. And then I can also confirm, I have exchanged several emails with the citizen, and I've answered his questions to the best of my ability at the moment. And then in my recommendation report, I hope to address them even further.
Great, that's wonderful. And my other question was with respect to the quilting operation on the smaller proposed parcel. And it said overnight. I've never heard of a sleepover quilting operation. Or how many people do they plan to accommodate? Do you have any idea?
Thank you through the chair. I believe they are planning to accommodate 6 to 10 people. I believe the agent is here and he can confirm the exact number of people they intend to accommodate overnight.
And are these 3 separate owners that will have each parcel, and it's just being submitted as one application since the parcels aren't severed?
Through the chair, as you said, currently the subject lands are one parcel and they are to be severed into separate parcels. And then in terms of ownership, the applicant will be able to provide additional information on who will ultimately be the owners of each severed parcel.
And the cold storage, so there would be, is that for fresh made in Brant County vegetables? Will there be transport trucks in and out of there all day long, or what can you tell?
Thank you through the chair. I am not aware of the particulars they will be storing in those units. I can have discussions with the applicant in regards to the exact particulars. And I do believe there will be transportation trucks used going to the facility, and they'll have access off of Oakland Road. This will all be reviewed through that transportation impact study and also through the detailed site plan control process as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, that actually might be a good couple of questions for the applicant when they're report. Councillor Pierce, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I just wanted to kind of circle back on the 125 meter for notification and stuff like that, especially when you consider a property, not only the size of this property, but the shape of this property, because there's a few jigs in it. And I'd be interested to know with the 125 meters, which neighbors did that not encompass? Because I'm thinking for this particular one, and I'm an advocate of expanding it more than that, but I think for this particular one, if you go from the outsides of this property, I think most of them would have been notified. So I'd be curious to know as to how many of the surrounding neighbors did not get notified and how many were sent out. Doesn't have to be answered now, but as was mentioned earlier by Matt, this is a question we have quite often in regards to the distance of notification, and it's kind of a tender spot to some neighbors that don't get it. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councilor Pearson. Well, man, if you could make note of that, that'd be appreciated. Any other questions from the committee at this time for the planner? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask the applicant or their agent to come forward if they would like to present. And I assume it's you, David. I don't guess you're on mute. David, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Unmute.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go. Yes, thank you to the mayor and members of council. Here to answer your questions. And I too did see the letter from the one neighbor, and I should be able to address those concerns as well. The property in question is designated as employment land, which is industrial, heavy industrial type use. And but a portion of it was zoned M3, and a smaller portion was zoned agriculture. So the rezoning brings all of the property under the M3 zoning. As far as the present owner, His background is in a cold storage warehousing in a facility in Ingersoll. And it covers a wide range of products from vegetables and the like of that, but also chocolate, some pharmaceuticals, technically, I guess, ice cream, and a whole range of things. His intention is to break it into three parcels. The proposed quilting studio, he and his wife operate a quilting supply shop in Ingersoll. The intent here, and the quilting is from personal experience of talking to a number of people that are into quilting, is quite a very active craft pastime. And again, speaking to people in that area, they do travel across the province to different workshops and venues to learn techniques relating to quilting and all of that type of thing. The idea of having a retreat, a weekend retreat would be offered to quilting groups, and there are unbelievable numbers, as I've been told, of these groups throughout Ontario. And as one told me on the weekend, that they're always looking for someplace new to go. And generally, I guess similar to pottery and that type of thing, they have guest presenters to do a workshop where the quilters actually participate. In this particular case, the existing house is a 3-story or 2.5-story old brick house, and it's the part that will be converted for the overnight accommodation, some facilities for cooking, that type of thing. And then adjacent to it and connected actually by a second floor walkway will be the area that'll be used for doing the demonstrations, but also outfitted with large tables. As you can imagine, quilting takes a lot of space, and with sewing machines, and then around the walls of the facility will be different materials, fabrics, and there will be some retail sales of those fabrics. Then beyond that, on the same property, the principle behind this will have a small contractor's yard. And adjacent to that, on the second parcel, will be a I guess referred to multi-user industrial plaza, and it'll be made up of tradespeople and their suppliers, that type of thing. And then again, as we talked about originally, the cold storage facility. We're going through the site plan process, and I know there were worries about noise and light and all that type of thing. What is anticipated is any storage related to the industrial plaza will be on the south side of the building, away from the residential views of the people located on the north side of Paris Road. The site plan process will deal with stormwater management, surfacing, that type of thing. And in that end, we have Cahoon Engineering and Bob Phillips working on the project with us. The only outstanding study to be done is relating to more of a comprehensive traffic impact study. It'll determine locations of entrances, that type of thing. And again, being through the site plan process, that'll give staff and concerned neighbors some positive feeling in that their concerns can certainly be addressed. So that's basically my presentation.
Okay, thank you, David. You actually you made it a lot clearer to me, but we'll go to the committee. And does anybody have questions for Mr. Rowe at this time? Okay, Councillor House.
Mr. Chair, this is a comment rather than a question. Is that all right?
Yeah, go ahead, sure.
Okay, thank you. Just to Mr. Rowe, there are elements of what you've described in your future plans that that fit in well with some of the arts and culture ambitions within the county, and specifically items that have been discussed within our tourism advisory committee outside of COVID, before COVID. And my comment is just to suggest that as the future unfolds and as we get out of COVID, you may wish to connect with that committee a little bit, and they would be interested in what you're planning to do.
Well, thank you.
That's a good point. Okay, thank you, Councillor House. Any more questions or comments for Mr. Rowe? Seeing none. Councillor Goward, question?
Yes, sorry. One quick one. Through you to Mr. Rowe. Do you know how large the cold storage, freezer storage building will be?
Oh, okay. I think it's buried somewhere in the technical aspects of the report. I know that they're intended to be in modules, and the number of from the concept plan, I think we have 11 modules. Those will be constructed based on the demand. Again, my client has a very strong background in this type of operation, and the intent will be they'll be expanded based on the demand and the need for the facilities.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. See no other questions from the committee. I will turn this part of the meeting, open this part of the meeting up to the public, and I'll ask if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. Adam, help us out.
Always. Mr. Chair, there are no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay, then I'll ask a second time. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this application? And I'll ask a third time if there's anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this application. Seeing none, I'll close this part of the meeting off to the public, and I'll bring it back to the committee. And I'm looking for a motion from the floor to receive his information. Moved by Councillor Wheat, second by Councillor Coleman. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, Mr. Rowe, hold on a second. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. And David, I think you know how it works. This is just to receive, and then it will go back to our planning staff, and they will come forward at a future date with a recommendation. But we appreciate you being here tonight. You did actually, well, at least, like I say, you explained it pretty good to me compared to what I had to work with. So thank you very much, sir.
Well, thank you. And I've got to thank staff for getting me connected at the last moment. So
okay.
It's getting a little antsy here, but no, I should thank staff for their help getting connected tonight to the meeting. Again, thanks.
We just take it granted, they make everything work seamlessly. But I've been on I'm telling you, I've been on other Zoom meetings. They don't start on time, and people are almost disappearing, and we take it for granted here at the county. But I appreciate the nice words. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, so that completes section 7, which was the public hearings under the Plan Act to receive information from the public. And this takes us to section 8, public hearings under the Plan Act to consider staff recommendations. Now, the first one we have up is 8.1. This is RPT-21-44 ZBA 0221. And this is regarding the application at 556 Mount Pleasant Road. So I will turn it over to our planning staff for a presentation. And Ryan, I guess that's you, Ryan Cummins.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject lands are located on the east side of Mount Pleasant Road, north of McGill Road, and south of Phelps Road in Mount Pleasant. Subject lands are approximately 0.38 hectares or 0.96 acres in size, and are surrounded by a mix of low-density residential and agricultural uses to the north, south, east, and west. The applicant is proposing to amend the zoning on a portion of the subject lands to construct a dwelling in accordance with the suburban residential SR zone criteria. Currently, the agricultural A zoning on the subject lands would require a minimum interior side yard setback of 4 meters, whereas the applicant is proposing to construct the dwelling in accordance with the SR zone minimum interior side yard setback, which is 1.5 meters. The area to be rezoned is approximately 0.25 hectares or 0.61 acres, which will match the limits of the suburban residential official plan designation on the subject lands. The balance of the lands at the rear of the property will remain in the agricultural zone, which conforms to the agriculture official plan designation. Staff is of the opinion that the proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the general intent of the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe and the County of Brant official plan. Therefore, staff is recommending that this application be approved. Thank you, and that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Ryan. Any questions for Ryan at this time? Okay, seeing none, I will ask, is the applicant or their agent here tonight to speak to this?
I am here. Yep.
And it's Adam Low.
Adam, yeah.
Adam, how do you say your last name?
Mahanye. Sorry, I don't have a camera.
That's fine. That's fine. You go ahead, Adam. Share your presentation.
I don't really have much to add to what Ryan said. We are like he summarized it very, very well. We're proposing to construct a larger dwelling in compliance with the SR designation rather than the A designation, just because the setbacks are in the A designation were it just didn't work for what my client, the owner, wished to build on this property, and we felt that the changing to the SR designation is in better agreement with the official plan for the area and the growth plan of the Ontario Greater Horseshoe area.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Is there any questions from the committee to the presenter? Okay, seeing none. Councilor Galloway, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Sorry, I did, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Through you to the delegate. When they rip the house down, are they planning to take all of that debris to the landfill? Or are they going to try and recycle some of the materials? Do you know?
From the existing dwelling?
Yes.
So the there is, I guess they're planning to try and salvage some of the metals, but most of it would end up in landfill as general construction waste.
Okay, and I assume that there isn't anything that, say, Habitat for Humanity could use from the house. They're always for good quality material.
Yeah, the existing dwelling has not been well taken care of by the tenants in the past years. So there's not really any good quality materials like
to salvage.
To salvage, really, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other hands raised, I'm going to turn this part of the meeting. I'm going to open it up to the public, and I'm going to ask if there's anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this application. I'll look to our clerk.
Mr. Chair, there are no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay, thank you, Adam. But I will ask a second time if there's anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this application. And I'll ask a third time if there's anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this application. Seeing and hearing none, I'll close this part of the meeting off to the public, and I'll bring it back to the committee. noting that there is a recommendation before us, and I'll ask the committee what they wish to do with it. I'll go to Councillor Coleman first.
And Mr. Chair, I do have a comment.
Okay. Do you want to wait till we get on the floor then?
Yep.
Fair enough. Can we get a mover for the motion on the floor? Mayor Bailey, second by Councillor Pierce. Okay. Councillor Coleman, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just going into the public consideration that 17 property owners were notified of this, and a sign was put up on the 23rd of March, 2021. My only problem is that this sign is blown down at least a week now, and it's been laying on the lawn. So it's hard for the public to see this. So I think that when signs do go up, that the applicant needs to be told to keep the sign up so the public are well notified of what's going on, because I have been driving by there a number of times in the last week. So I do know that the sign has been laying on the lawn. So thank you, Mr. Chair. That's my only comment. But I do support the recommendation.
Okay, fair enough. Actually, if I could go to Matt, is that ever discussed with the applicant to make sure that the sign is visible and presentable at all times, or what's that process like?
Thanks. Excellent question. In fact, the sign used to be the responsibility of the applicant to put up. We ran into an instance just right around, I want to say it was April or May of last year, where a sign wasn't put up with enough time, and then the application had to be postponed. So planning staff have taken on that responsibility now of erecting the sign. And it is communicated to the applicants that the sign must remain up during the duration of the application. However, we will remind applicants that of the importance of that sign remaining up, as it's part of the public notice.
Yeah, and I guess if it's not up, there's that possibility that this application would be delayed because improper notice was given. I guess if that was driven home to them, they would certainly be motivated, I guess, to keep it up. So, okay, thank you, Councillor Kohler, for that comment. Any questions or other comments on this application? Okay, see none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's carried. To Adam, this will go to our council meeting at the end of this month for final approval. All planning recommendations have to be approved by council. Just let the applicant know that. So, but I think you guys already know that. So thank you very much and have a good evening. This takes us to item 8.2, and this is our housekeeping amendment, RPT-21-77 and zoning bylaw amendment 0121 BK. And this is from Brandon. Brandon, do you want to speak to this before we dive into it? Do you want to highlight what's going on?
Yeah, through you, Chair Miller. I just have a very brief presentation, if that's all right, just to summarize some of the points for the
because
for the public.
It's a long one with a lot of detail. So yeah, if you could highlight the important ones for us.
Perfect. Let me just share my screen here. Alrighty. Can everyone see that?
Yes, we're good.
Perfect. Alrighty. So as Chair Miller mentioned, tonight's housekeeping is before you for recommendation. So this had come to the committee, I think 2 months ago now, and we've been in some conversation with the folks that have kind of come to us with comments and questions. We've rejigged a few things, and now we're comfortable with this coming forward for recommendation. So let's just flip through here. So just as a summary of some of the proposed changes, most of them are technical in nature. There's a few permission changes. I'll highlight those. But generally speaking, we're doing some kind of summary work to get things shipshape for our new official plan as well in the next year or so. So we do have some parking requirements that they'll see some changes to. The requirements themselves are not changing. It's just kind of the layout in the bylaw to simplify things for folks. We get a lot of questions about parking requirements, especially from developers. So we're trying to simplify that to make it a bit more straightforward. And one of the new requirements that's going in will be driveway separation requirements. We are proposing a minimum of 6.7 meter separation between driveways in our new developments. And so that 6.7 meter number comes from the length or the approximate length of a parking stall. And so we're trying to facilitate some better on-street parking in advance of the new policies that come forward with the new official plan and the new zoning bylaw. So we have had some good conversation with the developers with this one, and some are engineering folks as well. So we have some kind of caveats in there. So it won't apply to driveways that share, or won't apply to dwellings that share a driveway along a common lot line. So we're hoping this will encourage the developments to pair up their driveways together. And then that way that leaves more space between the other neighboring driveways for on-street parking. As well, if 2 exterior parking spaces can be provided. So that kind of ties into that 5.6 meter number there, which is the approximate width of 2 side-by-side parking spaces. And as well, there is a caveat in there for a garage setback if they're 11.5 meters or more from the sidewalk. So that allows for tandem parking to 2 vehicles in line with each other. The next one, we have some brief updates to our special event sales. So this has been in conversation with Economic Development and Tourism and the success of that program, and we'll see that coming forward again this summer. So we're just removing the time cap that we had put on it as kind of a way to at least experiment with that. So we are just allowing them to apply for their time as long as they apply within a full calendar year. They would just have to renew it in the next season, so the next year. So it just provides a bit more flexibility, especially in light of the COVID requirements, if and when we get outdoor sales and outdoor patio space permissions back. Residential accessory structures, again, we're adjusting the lot coverage permissions as well as the maximum height. This will help with some of the trends we've seen with minor variances and rezonings in our agricultural or rural areas. A lot of folks want to build kind of a little bit larger of an outbuilding, and as well with our ARU program, we're bumping up the height permission in these areas. So if folks do want to build, say, a suite above their garage or an outbuilding with a loft above it, this height permission will help facilitate that a little easier. Some general terminology and definition updates. So these are, again, no permission or requirement changes, but we're updating the terminology so that it conforms with current policy as well as kind of current trends. So you'll see that, for example, with the short-term accommodations, we're not changing any of our requirements for that. We'll be doing that kind of as a separate project. We're just adding that definition to our bylaw so that it's in there. Again, with lighting, we are adding some very basic requirements to our bylaw. But that's kind of in advance of considering a future nuisance lighting bylaw with the county. And then finally, we have some permission updates to our natural heritage system and our prime agricultural systems. And these are kind of a conformity exercise with provincial policy, as well as just to kind of create clearer permissions and requirements for folks who say have existing buildings in a natural heritage area, or for example, businesses that are set up in the agricultural areas that want to expand those opportunities. We're just trying to facilitate that and make it a little bit clearer for those types of situations. So with that, I'll leave that summary there, and I'll just end my screen sharing. But if anyone has any questions about it, I'm happy to answer those.
Okay, thanks, Brandon. Yeah, no, I appreciate the attention you have for detail. It's really good. But we'll go to the committee and we'll see if we have any questions for you. Any from the committee for Brandon? Okay, see Councillor Gatward, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Brandon. On page 163 of our package, or page 4 of whatever the number is, mapping errors, omissions, 4.1, you're correcting the zoning for our new Canesdale Fire Hall and proposed community center. Originally that property was zoned for heavy industrial, M3, and you want to change it to open space 2. Why open space? Why not institutional?
That's a great question. Thank you, Councillor Goward, for that. Through you, Chair Miller. So just on the way that the structure of the zoning bylaw works right now in our kind of policy framework, the open space zoning is more for community uses, at least that OS2 zoning. It's a bit of a tricky one in our bylaw right now, and I can see us adjusting that kind of in the future. But that change is being proposed as a way to kind of facilitate community uses on that site. So that institutional use, that would apply. It's just kind of the niche of that zoning code, the way that would apply now, if that kind of answers that question.
Okay, and is that consistent then throughout the county? As an example, the new Scotland Fire Hall is zoned open space as well?
Yeah, it is a consistent thing throughout the county. I'm not too sure of the exact zoning of the Scotland facility, but certain kind of churches and community centers facilities like that, they do receive that OS2 zoning. And like I say, it's just kind of the way that the standard of the zoning bylaw as it is right now, and they receive that to kind of the way that the official plan policy works with the zoning bylaw. That OS2 is a bit more flexible for the uses to apply than, say, a strict institutional zoning.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Councilor Goward. Any other questions for Brandon? Okay, I just got a couple questions, Brandon. I'll ask my one specific one. You talk about 2 spaces required for a single or a semi. In light of what we see in an application tonight on Dumfries Street, and parking was one of the big issues with the neighbors. Is a garage considered, like an attached garage, is that considered a parking space, whether they use it or not?
That's also a very good question, and one we receive frequently. So it is considered a parking space, but the way that the zoning bylaw regulates it is based on the active use. So if they're using it as storage, and it would be my opinion that it's not being used as a parking space. And if that's meant to be a required parking space, then that would be in contravention of the bylaw.
Okay, but that's hard to come at usually after the fact, because they might build it to use it, but you know, life gets in the way. As far as these amendments go, you've met with the development community, is my understanding, to talk about some of the issues. Was there any other, I didn't see any letters from the public. Was there any other public feedback other than from the development community?
We didn't receive any public feedback. We had circulated in the newspaper, and there were some notifications on the website as well, but yeah, nothing specific from the public.
Okay, I know in the past sometimes we've gotten all these presentations and they want something changed right away, but we dodged a bullet there. So okay, thank you. Any other questions for Brandon? Okay, Councilor Howard, go ahead.
Sorry, one quick one that I forgot. The maps at the back of this package, I appreciated looking at those. And when we were talking about signs being posted earlier tonight, it got me to thinking, sometimes we make these changes on properties and the public doesn't know about it. And then they come forward and say, well, I didn't know it got changed and it was done in a housekeeping bylaw.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be a good idea or possible if we're going to change any properties, the zoning, to have them posted with a sign, just like an applicant has to post a sign when they're changing the zoning? And that would make the public in the immediate neighborhood where we're going to change it via a housekeeping bylaw, that would make the public aware of what's happening.
Okay,
I'd like
Brandon, do you want to take a stab at that? I don't know about, I don't know about.
Sure, I'll just make a quick comment and then I'll let Matt jump in. So generally speaking, Councillor Goward, when we propose a housekeeping change to a specific property, we've had conversation with that property owner. So they're aware, and there generally either is an interpretive issue or it's just a lot line kind of mapping issue. So we're not actually changing any of the requirements or permissions on the property. Generally speaking, that use would be permitted if, say, we're adding a use, that use would already be permitted on that property by way of interpretation. And it's just a matter of kind of cleaning up the bylaw that way. But I'll maybe let Matt jump in if he has something further to add.
Okay, that's fine.
Let's let Matt jump in, Joe, just a second.
Okay.
Yeah, no, through the chair, that Brandon has the right of it. Generally speaking, we're really not changing any particular permissions. It's more of a cleanup piece, but it's duly noted. It is something that we will look into and see if it's something that we could start implementing in the future as we do these housekeeping amendments. There aren't that many site-specific amendments we do through this type of housekeeping cleanup. Usually it's county-wide, and so we take a certain path in order to circulate, like the newspaper and on the website, social media channels, to try to cover as broad of an audience as we can when we do that sort of broad spectrum change. But when it's a site-specific change, I do see Councillor Gatward's point, and we will look into that in the future.
And I do appreciate the fact that you contact the property owner.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Gatward. I can actually see, certain cases it might be warranted, but yeah, for the most part, probably not. Okay, seeing no other questions, we do have the recommendation before us. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Coleman, second by Councillor Wheat. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Brandon, thank you very much. Okay, so that concludes all our all our planning, staff reports done, communications done, other business. Nobody raised any when we asked. So that will take us to the in-camera part, and we need a motion to go in camera. And then once we're in camera, then we will have our clerk read out the in-camera oath. So can I get a mover to go in camera? Moved by Councillor Howell, second by Councillor McAlpine. Is that right? Yeah, good. Okay.
It is Tuesday, May the 4th.
May the 4th be with you.
Okay. I got there first. Okay. At this point, we are adjourned. So thank you very much.